I think if we are brutally honest about the impact of social movements, trade unions, NGOs, even progressive faith efforts and so on, at best we can say, when we look at the broad justice agenda and include climate change in that, at best we can say we are winning some important battles, but we are patently losing the planet or losing the war. If I look at last year, what we were seeing, we were winning many important battles against big corporates who were driving environmental destruction.
Can you give an example?
An example would be around water pollution in China, right, where the Yangtze and the Pearl rivers are being heavily contaminated by the supply chain of companies like Nike, Puma, Adidas, H&M, and so on, using in their supply chain, companies that just dump pollutants into these rivers. Now we were able to use our global nature, using online and offline, right, to actually get pressure on the companies that were partnering with certain entities in China and got them to agree in a short space of time that over the next 5-6 years they will phase out, pollutants that are going into the rivers and so on. Now the impact on the Chinese government saw what we did, and then they've now drawn up a list of banned substances, and they are saying
Excellent.
that even if it's not explicitly outlawed by the law, that if there is a negative impact, the polluter pays principle must kick in, right? So, but the important thing I think is how we mobilize is changed fundamentally as a result of the whole email, internet environment. But, people talk about this activism as cyber activism or clicktivism. Some people say, well, clicktivism is slacktivism. But if you're a cyber activist in Syria right now, nobody can say you're slacking, right? So its context is really important. But at the end of the day, I think much as Greenpeace and other movements are using social media very effectively right now, we would make a mistake to think we can strengthen social movements and build them by putting all our eggs in the social media basket. We cannot get away, as Chida and others are saying, from conventional face-to-face organizing. And let's not undermine and underplay the fact that there is still a deep, deep digital divide, right? And many of the constituencies that we want to have voice and to be engaged are outside of that digital world. That might change in the next 5 years if mobile telephony becomes more sophisticated and people on cheaper phones can get better internet access and so on. But actually, we're really not there. And don't forget that when we look at people who suffer in this planet, from homeless, so if you were to draw a map of the world and say, let's put all the homeless people and draw a circle where they are. Then you say all the people who do not have access to clean drinking water, those that don't have access to sanitation, those that suffer gender-based violence. You'll find, or those that are not literate, who cannot, even if they have the technology, will not be able to, access it because of being historically, educationally disenfranchised. What you will find, those circles overlap. People suffer multiple levels of exclusion. And one of the criticisms, I think we must be honest as civil society, is that we also mimic and mirror the kind of siloed thinking that comes from governments. We have to begin to recognize that we will never have the impact that we need if we don't follow what the women's movement taught us some decades ago, which is this whole notion of intersectionality. And that is understanding how different issues, class, race, gender, ability, and so on, how different variables, if you want, or different sectors of struggle are connected. Because bottom line is, if you take the trade union movement is coming extremely close to the NGO movement on climate change because we've been dialoguing about actually we can turn the crisis of climate change into an opportunity if we can get governments to move decisively in the direction of creating enabling legislative environments to promote a move to a green, renewable technology-based economy. The job creation potential there is much more. The decency of the work would be much more. If you look at coal, for example, coal kills not just the workers but the people who live around coal plants and so on. So in fact, the elephant in the room is why, right, after so long, everything that people like Sheila and I say here, let's be clear, people here have heard it before. It's not as if they've not heard it, right? But why is there a lack of urgency to move when in fact we've won the debate?
Yeah,
right?
It's not an intellectual deficit.
It's an issue about power and who holds power, right? And at the moment, when you look at the United States, where every member of Congress has 3 to 4 full-time lobbyists targeted at them, paid for by the oil, coal and gas industry to make sure that climate legislation doesn't go through, we need to ask, well, why are they able to get away with it? And also question the quality of democracy. I mean, I would say that today the US democracy could be described as the best democracy fossil fuel money can buy. Right? No, I mean, the contamination of our politics by moneyed interests has to be challenged, and we have to also begin to challenge ourselves about what history teaches us about how change happens. And history teaches us, the last point, history teaches us, whether it's a US civil rights movement, anti-apartheid, women's right to vote, and any number we can go and look at. Change only comes when decent men and women say enough is enough and no more. We're prepared to go to prison if necessary. We're prepared to put our lives on the line if necessary. And I would say that when the world is in such a precarious and vulnerable situation, the time has come for us to actually embrace civil disobedience much more, because that seems to be what has a greater power to get those with power to actually listen more effectively.